Game week 13 is the most popular week for the free hit chip, and that brings opportunity for both those with it active and those with the courage to take on the template. And today I'm going to talk about the free hit draft and why I am declining the option, for I have some big transfer moves to discuss, including perhaps the toughest decision I will have to make all season. And if I have the courage to see it through, not only do I think those free hit teams can be beaten this week, but I also believe the long-term strategy will pay off big style. And yes, it is a big balls call, but I've already broken even on the 28 points of hits in 5 game weeks, and I faced down Erling Haaland last week and I emerged with a green arrow, so these big calls are starting to fall in my favour. And while this may well be the biggest of all, it's also the one that I am most confident will prove successful. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about last week because I did over an hour's worth of reaction videos, and there's not an awful lot more that can be said about what ultimately turned into a pretty nothing game week. But it's funny because that nothing game week, where only one of my players scored over 6 points, to me that encapsulates the beauty of this game, and also what I keep saying about how the key to FPL is less about how we manage our players but more about how we manage our emotions. By going against Haaland on the Saturday, I limited my stress for the game week, because though I was betting against the best player in the game for captaincy, he was also playing my beloved Newcastle. So even if I had Haaland as captain, I would still have been dreading him scoring. Even if Haaland went big, I would still be devastated, even though a higher proportion of my rivals than normal went against him. For me, the stress of going against Haaland was mitigated, and that made the joy of both Newcastle's win and my gamble paying off that much more intense. And then I had 2 full days, 48 glorious hours of that wonderful, intoxicating, all-consuming hope. And yes, Man United did what Man United do, and they let down everyone who believed in them. But those 48 hours, that is what this game is all about. That dopamine rush of taking on the best and emerging victorious, and having all that time knowing the worst that could happen is your player does not take advantage. And even if somehow your differential captain does something stupid and gets himself sent off, it barely even matters, because as soon as the game is over, the planning for the next challenge begins. Whatever the eventual points outcomes, the absolute nothingness that was game week 12 embodied minimising the disappointments and maximising the benefits that this game provides. And that is something I think is worth keeping in mind going forward, because the more we enjoy the game, the better we become at it, and that only ever increases our chances of success. So now we look to the plans for the future, and it's impossible to do that this week without looking at the prospect of a free hit draft. If you remember, last season the game week 34 free hit was immensely popular. Well, as you can probably guess, I gambled against it. The game week 34 free hit proved spectacularly successful, and it signalled the start of the spiralling of my season. So knowing that this is again the most popular week to play the chip, it would be remiss of me not to entertain the idea. And look, my draft looks almost exactly the same as all the other ones you have seen. Triple Brentford, triple Villa, triple Man City, Mo Salah, plus one other player to make it feel a bit more personalised. For me, I have included Munoz in mine, because I think that Man United fixture is almost perfect for him, and he has points potential permeating from every pore. But you could go with another Liverpool player, or a Spurs player, or really anybody that you want. The fact is, if you are going with free hit this week, this is the basic structure of the draft. Will it do well? Most likely, irrespective of which of the somewhat obvious players from the aforementioned teams you go for. You have one excellent team with a great fixture. You have 2 teams who can play very well on the day at home to 2 poor teams. You have the FPL record-breaking point scorer from last season. You have that spicy differential you fancy. You won't want most of these players next week. It is almost almost a perfect storm, so activate and let the points rain in. That is the logical play. Ultimately, whichever week we play the chip is a gamble when there are no blanks or doubles, so you may as well go for it in a week when your team will look the most different to normal, and when the highest potential player, Erling Haaland, has as close to a banker as you can get. You are minimising the risk while maximising the upside, and that is all you can ask for on a free hit. However, I am not going to activate my free hit this week, and this is not the logical play. I accept that. I know fine well that keeping the chip in my back pocket is laden with risk, but I have not succumbed to the advances of the algorithm acolytes just yet, and my gut instinct is telling me the best game week is yet to come. The template breaker inside of me is urging me to go against the grain one more time, to back myself to find more points elsewhere, and to give myself the best possible chance of climbing those ranks. I am a long way back, yet I refuse to give up the quest for the best possible finish. I still believe I can win the Nightmares Dreamers mini league, even though I am 156 points off Dan the Man Oxley, who is still 46 points ahead of FPL Fran and all of the rest of the FPL YouTube big guns who dared to enter the world's toughest mini league. And that mini league, it got even tougher this week, because FPL Fella and Planet FPL James, they've both entered the royalist of rumbles, and it won't get any easier, because next week the godfather himself, Mark Southerns, he is also entering the fray in that coveted number 50 spot. I'm trying to win the most unwinnable of competitions, and instead of looking for ways to make it easier, I am cranking up the pressure on myself. And I will do a proper rundown of the league in a couple of weeks time, but let me tell you, it has not got any better for me. Things are so bad, I'm now only 3 points ahead of Black Box Az, but I have an almost delusional belief I can somehow claw back this deficit, and to do so I have to take calculated risks. And I did that with the Fernandes captaincy, and it did not pay off, but I am confident that delaying my free hit will. In the back of my mind, I actually think my team can beat those chip playing cartel champions. Solio may suggest that belief is misguided, but my soul, it screams for courage, and that is what I will show. The other advantage in not playing the free hit is that rather than procure a player for one game week, I can cherry pick the best of them for the longer term. And for me this week, I see 4 key options to choose from. I do absolutely nothing and trust my squad. I sign a new defender, I sign a new midfielder, or I sign a new goalkeeper. Now if we look at my squad, I think doing absolutely nothing could work well. All it would need is a Newcastle 1-0 win through a Voltemada goal assisted by Big Dan Burn, and I would be laughing. But here's the problem with that. It is relying on my beloved Newcastle, a team with one of the worst away records around, to win against a bunch of notorious spoilers. Jordan Pickford already denied my differential gambit once this week, and against Newcastle I would not be surprised if he does it again. This is the fixture that always sends Pickford to extremes, and he's either turning into prime Peter Schmeichel or he's doing his best Andre Onana impression. So that is one problem with the Newcastle trio. The other is that I just can't be sure Nick Pope or Dan Burn even start this weekend. Now Big Dan Burn, I do think he will start, but I also think Newcastle will play a 4-man defence with Lewis Hall and the aura killer Tino Livramento at fullback, which leaves Burn competing with Fabian Schär and Sven Botman to partner Malik Chow. I do think this is a battle that Dan Burn will win, but I could easily be wrong, and even if I am not, our away form is appalling. But Nick Pope, look, I love the lad, but it's high profile error after high profile error. It's game game losing choice after game losing choice, and I feel Howe has to give Ramsdale the start. So doing nothing could well see me end up with Dubravka in goal, and while I would quite enjoy him keeping all those free hit Brentford triple ups quiet, I'm not entirely confident he would do so. There's a reason I brought in Igor Thiago for a hit after all. So that leads to one of the other options, and that is to replace Nick Pope. Now I can't get to David Raya, so for me that limits the options as replacements. One I could go for is Robert Sanchez, who has 4 clean sheets in his last 5 games, but now he has an 8-game spell where he plays Arsenal, he plays Bournemouth twice, he plays Newcastle, Villa and Man City. I just don't think that is the fixture run to be signing a keeper for. None of the under 5 million keepers appeal at all, not even Rurfs, the top scoring keeper in the game. I could go with Dean Henderson with 3 clean sheets on the bounce and 6 in total, but if I am to double up on the Palace defence, I just think there are better options. And then there is Gianluigi Donnarumma, arguably the best goalkeeper in all of world football, with 4 clean sheets in 9 Premier League games already, and now he has Leeds, Fulham, Sunderland and West Ham in his next 5 games. Not only that, he is as nailed as it gets in that Man City defence, and he even has 2 save points in 3 games. But it is an awful lot of money to invest in a goalkeeper with a lower ceiling than most, who is playing behind a defence which is very good but not elite. Plus I think this is a week where more points could be gained elsewhere, so I think I will defer the goalkeeper decision, see what happens with Nick Pope this weekend, and be thankful that at least Dubravka has a decent game if he is needed off my bench. So that leaves the defender and midfield options, and in both cases it is a Manchester City player at the top of my list. Now I know Phil Foden has flattered to deceive thus far, with only 1 goal and 1 assist despite 9 starts on the bounce, but if I look at where my team could be hurt the most this week, it's those Foden free hitters. He will be immensely popular, and he has the potential of a 20-pointer in him. He could easily be this week's Eze, and then he has that same delightful fixture run as Donnarumma. We are only a season removed from Foden being the player of the year and scoring 230 points, lest we forget. Of every potential signing, Foden is the one I fear the most this week. And yes, Morgan Rogers, he looks great as well, but it is only 1 game where he has really gone big so far, so I don't fear him so much. And remember, the game that Rogers went big was against Leeds, and that is who Foden plays this week, so you can see why the fear is there. Furthermore, longer term, I think Foden has by far the better fixtures than Rogers, so it is only really Foden in consideration. But to get him, I would have to sell Semenyo, Fernandes or Mbumo, and call me daft, but I don't think any of those 3 are worth selling this week, not with Semenyo back in training. As bad as that Man United pair were the other night, they are both still comfortably outscoring the City slicker, and Semenyo returning to his former club is a narrative I just can't ignore. And while the old me would have been all over Semenyo or Fernandes to Foden this week, I am now a year older and a year wiser, and the new Nightmare, he listens to the legendary Nick Triggerlips with his 4 top 1k finish mindset, and my man Trigger, he always urges caution when it comes to selling one good player for another good player for no good reason. And having just seen several of my mates sell Eze's 20 points last week, I think I might just listen to the man with a 35th place finish when it comes to this one. So that just leaves a defender, and to be honest, this is the transfer I feel I am most likely to make. And though Big Dan Burn is fighting for his place in the Newcastle team, it's actually Marco Senesi I'm thinking of selling. And look, I know they've conceded a lot of goals away from home recently, but I still think Senesi is a very solid option. He has secured the DEFCON bonus in every single away game this season, and at home his expected goals conceded has always been 0 point something. However many goals Bournemouth have actually conceded, guaranteed DEFCONs away and an average of 0.47 expected goals conceded at home is absolutely perfect for a defender. You could literally play Senesi under any circumstances and expect expect some extra points, and he will tick over nicely, and he has 3 attacking returns already too. Hell, the more I talk of him, the sillier it seems to sell him, but the reason I am considering it is that if you look at that third defender rotation I devised for my team last week, well, the West Ham game is gone, and of the next 9 games I only plan to play Senesi twice. Big Dan Burn, I've got him down 5 times, plus I am emotionally invested in the big man. I love the bloke, and Mukiele, well, he's only 4.2 million, so it makes no sense to sell him, especially when possessing both Mukiele and Burn guarantees a home option every week. And even those 2 games I have Senesi down to start, I would back Newcastle at home against both Spurs and Chelsea, and I would have no problem starting Big Dan Burn at all. So Senesi is the obvious one of the 3 to make way, because there's no chance I'm selling Timber or Munoz. But why, Nightmare? Why do you need to sell any of them at all? Well, I don't, not really, but Nico O'Reilly has 30 points in his last 3 home games, and he's up against Leeds. In his last 5 games, his expected goal involvement is 0.3 per 90 minutes. That's the same as Timber. It's better than Munoz, better than Calafiori, and it's considerably better than James Cucurella or the almighty Gabriel. And you look at those fixtures and you think clean sheets are surely coming. He's got 5 already. And you think about how Aït-Nouri is off to the AFCON in a few weeks, and I'm thinking that selling Senesi for O'Reilly is about as big a points upgrade to my team that I can make in a single transfer. You factor in that all those free hitters will want O'Reilly permanently next week, and that team value could be delicious. But now, having worked through all that, well, I'm thinking, well, Senesi is absolutely nailed, whereas Big Dan Burn, we just can't know for sure. And if Senesi has elite defensive data at home and guaranteed defcons away, is there a better defensive sub than him, able to step in at any time should O'Reilly miss out? Like, if we look at the fixture rotation with Nico O'Reilly factored in, then the first game week I would seriously consider not starting O'Reilly would be game week 20. If O'Reilly missed out in any week, then Senesi would be a more than adept substitute, and then of course I'd have Mukiele on the bench for an emergency. And I'm starting to realise that the only sensible thing to do is to sell Big Dan Burn, and my inner child is screaming at me, you can't do it, Nightmare, you can't sell your favourite player. But winter is almost upon us, and maybe what my team needs most is for me to kill the boy and let the man be born. So if I do follow through and I bring in O'Reilly for Burn, and I absolutely cannot promise that I will, because I am as governed by emotions as logic, and I make no secret of that. But if I do, then this is what my team will look like. And you know, I think that is more than capable of matching or beating those free hit drafts, even if Pope does miss out. Munoz is capable of a 15 pointer even if he concedes. Timber has great potential at both ends of the pitch. Declan Rice is almost a guarantee of points nowadays. Those Man United players could both deliver the goods, especially with a response expected. Antoine Semenyo is more than capable of matching or beating Rodgers, Foden and Sharda combined. And Volta Marda, well, he is such a classy operator, and for all people were saying I was lucky that Haaland didn't brace last week, I would argue they were luckier Volta Marda didn't do the same. And if Pope does miss out, well, let's face it, the way Newcastle have been playing away from home this year, Dubravka probably has as much chance of points as Pope this week anyway. And then next week I can take another look at the goalkeeper options. But that O'Reilly signing, I think it is a shrewd one, because it's another long-term addition to the squad that I don't have to think about. And then suddenly I have 2 free transfers left to use before the game week 16 top-up, and the only 2 real issues in that team are Nick Pope and maybe Volta Marda. And if I do burn to O'Reilly, then I would have the exact funds next week for Pope to Raya if I desired, and depending on how long Gabriel is out, that could be another shrewd move indeed. And if I do get priced out, I could drop Longstaff down to a cheaper bench option in game week 14, and then I'd be able to afford Pope to Raya in game week 15 if I wanted, or even Dean Henderson if I decide I don't need Lacroix or Gehi, and then I have 5 free transfers with an almost perfect long-term squad, and then surely the disco ball drops and the green arrow party begins. And all I have to do to achieve that magnificence is to sell my favourite player. It is that easy and that difficult. And I know if I do, my inner child will be disappointed in me, but I do believe I can make it back up these ranks if I am prepared to let the man be born, and I do believe I can turn this season around. And that disappointed inner child, well, he was a reader, and he liked the story of Peter Pan, and he remembers the quote from that book, the one which said, "The moment you doubt whether you can fly, you cease forever to be able to do it." And I do believe I can fly, I do. The problem is I always fly far too close to the sun, and this game has a habit of crashing me right back down to earth. Ha ha!